Have you just had a blue day lately? I have. But you know, I always say, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. And I'm going to join feet first and make a quilt out of this beautiful layer cake called Indigo Splash. Will you join me? Hi, I'm Di with Sister Chicks Quilting, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm so excited to be working with blue and white fabric. And the name of this fabric, or the name of this fabric line, is called Indigo Splash. It is absolutely gorgeous. The blue and white in it are just so traditional and so classic. But I didn't just buy the layer cake, I bought some yardage. This is in the line as well, and I thought it would be gorgeous background fabric. What do you think? It's just so, I don't know, blue and white. I love it. And then as I was buying the fabric, I bought more. I thought, let's see, sashing or a thin border. So I bought, I think, a yard of this. Then I bought this piece. What do you think? I bought like 2 yards of this. But this I bought quite a bit of. It was actually 3 yards of this because I thought this would make a beautiful border. But guess what I'm doing? I'm taking this and this and this, and I'm dumping them. I'm not going to use them in my quilt. They'll have to go in my stash because the quilt I'm making is a very modern quilt, and there's going to be no sashing and no borders. That is just one of the elements of a modern quilt. Let's get started. I am ready to cut that layer cake into pieces. You know, I forgot to show you one of the pieces that I'm adding to this fabric. So take a look-see at these gorgeous blues. These are all the lighter versions. Are they just stunning or what? And what I've decided to do to go modern is add a touch of a complementary color. Do you all know what the complementary color to blue is? If you've guessed the color of my sweater or orange, you were right on the money. So I am going to have this piece of art gallery in my quilt. And I'm not going to put it everywhere. I'm excited to show you how I use it, but it is really going to add to the modern vibe of this quilt. The first thing I did to start this quilt was to separate out my layer cake. I pulled all of the lighter colors out. There's contrast, but not the type of contrast that I wanted. I went with the mediums and the darks. This is the contrast that I want. And the second thing I did was make a bunch of layer cakes out of my background yardage. I have a stack of layer cakes from the background, which is really just a 10 by 10 square. Layer cakes are cool. I like them because there's so much real estate available. If you have yardage that is just beautiful that you want to show off, a layer cake is really the way to get at that yardage. I am going to mark every one of these white layer cakes or background layer cakes from corner to corner with a heat disappearing pin like this. Okay? And I'm going to get them as close as I can, and I bet you know what I'm going to do next. You guessed it. I am going to make some half square triangles. I just recently did a video on half square triangles. In it, I said that the half square triangle is, in my opinion, the basic building block of quilt. You can do more with a half square triangle block than you can with any other block. I mean, I'd like to see you challenge me because I don't think it's happening. I believe what I believe. You don't have to believe it, but anyway, that is just my opinion. because I do so much quilting and I see the options available with a half square triangle. The next part, we're going to make our half square triangles. That good old basic building block. Stick with me because I'm going to show you how easy it is and what tools to use to make sure they're perfect half square triangles. To make the half square triangles, take a 10-inch square of your layer cake and put on one of the marked background pieces. What I do is I always make sure I line up one side like so. Make sure everywhere I can see, a little bit of jagged edge. So I'm going to line up the edge of my presser foot right next to the line that I've drawn. And holding it in place, I'm not pinning it, but you could pin it if you wanted to. I'm going to sew these pieces on. So here's a second one. Again, I'm going to line it up, make sure I have some good edges all the way around, and I'm going to do the same thing and keep going. And then, of course, you know that you have to do the other side. Now that you have these sewn, cut them apart. To cut these in half, use my large 24-inch ruler to lay it right next to the line that I've drawn and give them a slide. And I'm going to do this 4 times, then I can't wait to show you what these HSTs make next. Before you iron on a Laura Star, the first thing you always do is purge the seam from the holes. I'm just going to set the seam, then press it down. And I'm going to do that on all of these. Isn't that just the slickest ever? I want to show you how I square these up. Squaring them up is vital. Vital because you want your quilt to turn out with points. Now, the first thing I've done is I've marked my ruler as a guide for me so I know that I'm laying the right line down on my block. I've got it marked at 9.5 inches on both sides, on this side and on this side, and I've given myself a corner. When I do the first one, I actually don't use the corner, and I'll show you why in a minute. So what I do is I put this to the top of my half square triangle, and I am laying this diagonal line right on the diagonal line of my half square triangle. Then when I do, I look at this line here at the 9.5 inch line that extends out here, and there's fabric on both sides. Well, that one is a little close. So I am going to slide it up a little, because what I've done is, let me point something out. I squared these up really close, cutting off as little as possible because I wanted size. You probably would do better off your first time squaring off one of these blocks at 9¼ or even 9 inches. But I'm giving myself a bit of a challenge here because I figure I can handle it. So now I have fabric on this side of the 9½ inch line and on this side. And then I'm going to hold it down and I'm going to cut it off. Now it looks like I didn't cut any fabric off, but look at this. Ooh, just barely. Look at that I'm giving up. About that much from each block. I love these scraps. I don't know about you, but when I'm squaring up blocks, I love saving the square up scraps and seeing the big pile before I throw it away. I have been known to post that on social media. Now what I'm doing is lining up the block. I'm lining up the ends of the block we just cut with this tape and this tape. I can see this line extend out here. It needs to come out just a little. I'm lining this diagonal line up with the diagonal line on my block. And then when it's where I want it to be, which would be 9½, 9½, and the diagonal, and there's still something left, I'm going to press down and trim. Take a look. Then I trimmed this much off. This block is perfectly squared up. Do you see that the seam line is right in the corner there? And it's right in the corner here. This is a beautiful block. Let's try another one on one that you might be able to see a little bit better. And that's this one. So you can get the gist of this. But again, remember, the first time we want our fabric to go on this side of these lines. Got it? I'm going to put it as close to the tip without going off the fabric as I can. It's over about 1/8 inch here and a little more here. And I think we have it. Here I go. Look at that. Now we're going to turn the block and line the side and the bottom up with the 9½ inch mark. I always start with the diagonal line first. And there I have it. See how slick that is? I will go ahead and finish this pile. This is where the fun begins, right here at the needle. I'm going to sew 2 of these half square triangles together into a block. And it's not going to be just any block. I am going to be making some, check it out. What does that look like to you? A flying goose? A big one too. I am going to be turning these and making a flying geese unit out of each one of these that I have cut up. I've got them nice and pressed and even. What I'm going to do is fold these 2 like this. I'm only going to use 1 pin on this. Can you guess where I'm going to put it? Up here at the top is correct, if you guessed that. So I can feel by my fingers that this edge, I can't nest these seams because this seam goes like this and this seam goes like this. So I can feel with my fingers that I'm pretty close. So I'm going to stick a pin through right on the seam line and then turn it over and take a look-see. And I don't like that look-see because this pin is on the wrong side of the seam. So I'm going to come over a little bit, pin again. Oh, and that was perfect. I could feel it going through, but I want this seam and this seam to line up perfectly. So I am going to put a pin there, check these to make sure they're square, and they are, if you wanted to be anal about it. Am I saying that? I can't believe I just said that. But you could pin that side, and then you could also pin this side. But look, they're laying pretty right on. So I'm going to just give this a quick stitch up. Take a look what I just made. Isn't that pretty? Look at that big sucker of a flying goose. I can't wait to show you what I'm going to do with these blocks. Will they end up flying geese? I don't know. You'll have to stick with me and see. But, you know, I know you've seen my thumbnail, so you probably know what I'm going to do. As you could see in the one that I sewed, I at first tried to figure out how I'm going to make all of these little designs here go the same way. Gave it up. I just said, it's something I'm going to own. I'm not going to be able to make them all go the same way. So in the quilt, in this background fabric, it's kind of all over the place. And I've owned the look, and I like the look. Let's go ahead and line this guy up and give him a sew. And again, I'm using one pin. This is where you definitely want to use a pin, because this is giving you a point. And you know how I feel about points. I like them. The moment of truth, drum roll, bada bing, bada bang. That's a nice point. I zoomed in so you could see something lovely. See, I'm just going to fold it open with my fingers and let the Laura Star, whoops, do its work. Flip it over. A thing of beauty, don't you think? Look at that flat seam. I think you know what's next. Do you want to meet me at the design wall? I'm so excited to show you my idea. I'm about to give you my new quilt. I am so excited. Here goes. What do you think? I am so in love with this quilt. Do you like the thick piece of sashing? Just one. It's modern. We only need one piece of sashing. Now it is going to go all the way to the bottom. And what you can't see is that there's 1, 2, 3 more rows underneath. Let me show you the piece of sashing that's going to go here on the very bottom. See this skinny piece? I am going to sew them together with some of the white background in between and on the sides. And it is going to go across the bottom like that. You know, the eye just travels around this quilt, and this is what happens. Because I'm using complementary colors, this is a standout. And we only need one piece. And you know what? It points down, and it points down to this strip across the bottom, and the eye comes up this strip, goes over and picks this up, and the whole eye is taking in this quilt like a big circle. Do I need borders? Absolutely not. You know what I'm going to do with all of that fabric that I bought for borders and sashing? It's going to be a really cool piece backing. I'm so excited about this quilt. I can't wait to get it done. What I'm going to do now is sew the rows across. I'm going to start with these 3 pieces the second row of 3, the third, fourth, fifth. I'm going to sew this in half, and then I'll put this strip on the side, and then I'll sew this column on the side. So I better get busy. I've got quite a bit of sewing to do, and I want to show you a finished quilt top at the end of this video. Now I'm making the white strips that go between the 2 small horizontal orange strips towards the bottom of the quilt. I'm doing this improv, which makes the quilt feel even more modern to me. Improv meaning I'm just cutting the width that I want them. In the pattern, I went ahead and put the measurements in for you. I'll cut 2 of each size and then sew them together on the short end to be long enough for the width of the quilt. I'll also cut 3 strips, one below the first orange strip, one in the center of the 2 orange strips, and one on top, all varying sizes. This will also add some length to the quilt as well as interest. Next, I'm going to sew the strips all together into one unit. That way it will be much easier to attach as one unit than a bunch of little strips. I am more than excited to get this quilt sewn together. Let's see, I know there's a piece in here. Did I drop it? Oh, oopsie, left it on the long arm. Here is my top because the orange one is facing down. Let's see, up, down, up. Yep, this is right. I am going to use a lot of pins. Now, I don't know if you've noticed or not. Right here, I have a seam, and I want it to match with this seam on this side, but something's in between it, this big piece without a seam. And you can still sew these together and have this seam here and this seam over here, and it'll look like crap. So what I'm going to do is pin it as best I can, and I'm going to show you a little trick. What I'm going to do, and I sure hope you can see this, here is this seam when it's upside down. So I'm going to lay this out flat, really eyeball them as best I can. There's a little bit of a bump in this side, so pulling this over, I'm thinking that is pretty lined up. Okay, and I'm going to have to sew it on this side because it has a point on it. So I'm going to put the pin right there and continue down this piece. Well, these end pieces are measured the same. If you're wondering why there's a magazine under my sewing machine, it's because I'm sewing on a Costco table and it bows a little bit, and my table therefore rises and falls. What I've done is put a magazine under it. Let's flip this over, eyeballing it. That's pretty square. That one's pretty odd. You know, after that little tug, this one got lined up. And then I can put pins in the rest of the, fabric. One tip I have for you when you're sewing something like this with points in it, dude, use pins. Make sure you use the term dude too. Sorry, my language isn't maybe sometimes the most refined, shall we say. All right, let's get busy sewing. We're pinned, and I'm very satisfied that it's going to be a good match. So let's do this my favorite way, really, really fast. I know you can all see the elephant in the room, but before I show it to you, I'd like to thank a few viewers. First, for those that sent me cups of tea. Meg Murray, you didn't have to. Your business was good enough. And Colleen, thank you so much for the cups of tea. Now, I have to say, I got to quilt a quilt for Meg. If any of you would like me to quilt your quilts, my prices are on my website and you can submit an online form. That's sisterchicksquilting.com. I would love your business. I also want to thank Cindy Olson, a friend and a viewer, and Donna Harpt from Sewing, and Donna from Handmade by Ying with Donna. Thank you for the super thanks. I really appreciate you too. I have some fun viewer comments. And Connie JD wanted to know what I do when I get stuck on a quilt. My number one go-to, put on some tunes that motivate me, get me going, and set a timer. I like to see what I can get done in 30-minute increments. It's fun. At least it motivates me. So that's what I do. Then Anita Southall Harris is from Western Australia. And she shared with me that every state in Australia has a nickname for the people that live in that state. Well, hey, you sand groper. I love that name. Thanks for sharing that interesting fact, Anita. And I would also like to give a shout out to my friend Diane Crowder in Northern New York. I know she watches my show because occasionally I get a phone call from her and she tells me what's going on or what she's seen on my channel. So hey Diane, nice to see ya. Here's my ta-da moment. Let me just pin it up here. And here. Ta-da! What do you think? I love this quilt. It's my original design, and I'm going to name it Silly Goose because there's one silly goose in it. Let me give you a few takeaways that I learned by making this quilt. Now, I used a complementary color theme. As you can see, blue and orange are right across the color wheel from each other, and that makes them complementary. And they look good together. Also, I use this theme because it matches the rug in my living room. I think this quilt would be fantastic out of any color. What do you think? Another takeaway from this quilt, because of the size of these blocks, they're about 9.5 by 18. It goes together so fast. I'll tell you where all the time is in making this quilt, in squaring up your HSTs, but it's certainly worth it to take the time to square up the HSTs because look at the results. It really did go together pretty easy. And the third takeaway that I would say, always use pins with your points. There aren't that many points in this quilt, but where they are, you want them to stand out. You wouldn't want these cut off because it would take away from the quilt for sure. So grab your pins and make sure you give yourself the time. Be patient with yourself and you can do this quilt too. Now, if you want to purchase this pattern, I'm going to have a link in my description below this video. And if you don't know where that is, look below the videos for the word more, M-O-R-E, in bold letters. Click on that and all this information is going to pop up and you'll find what you're looking for. You know, I've really enjoyed hanging out with you and making this quilt. I love it and I hope you love it as much as I do. If you do, I would love a thumbs up, a subscribe, or share my video with your friends. And until the next video comes out, bye. Thank you for watching.